Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance.
We're all children of God, but in what way do God's men actively strive to serve their Lord? At God's Men of Influence, we believe that when men are open to sharing their testimony, God's light shines into the darkness and sets loose His transforming power into our lives. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another." Our mission is to create an environment where men can sharpen each other through the sharing of changed lives, and how through God's grace and mercy, we can become better husbands, better fathers, and better men in the service of His kingdom. Be blessed, be joyous, and be welcome here at God's Men of Influence.
Hey everybody, this is Dino from God's Men of Influence. We got a really great show for you here today because, as I've said in the past many times, man's testimony is always a lesson for the rest of us. Now, we've all gone through different things in our life. Some have gone through some major addiction. Some have gone through financial hardship, bad marriages, difficult parents that maybe did some things to them that weren't so good or put him down all the time. You know, whatever it is you've experienced, my goal here with this show is to bring men on that have also experienced something similar, maybe even worse, and then to show you how once you surrender, drop to your knees and surrender to God and say, God, help me, how everything can change. And it really doesn't matter what happened in your past, because your past is just that, it's your past. All you need to be looking forward to is your future, right? So today, Jon Lugo is here to share his testimony with us. A great story, though, of how I met him first, because I don't know him that well. I go work out early in the morning, and there's other freaks out there that are also up super early in the morning at the gym, and then you got this bald-headed guy that's full of tattoos that kind of looks mean if you don't know him, you know, from a distance. But then he's wearing a tank top one day that says Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, and just so happens, if you go to our website, which, by the way, is godsmenofinfluence.org, right at the very top, it says Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another, which to me is what this entire ministry is about. And then, you know, I still didn't say anything to him because I was like, yeah, you never know, he's still mean looking. but we eventually met, we talked, and, you know, couldn't help it. Started talking about God. And here he is today to share his testimony. So, Jon, thanks for coming on the show with us.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
So, Jon, the first question I ask everybody right out of the bat is, are you ready to be exposed?
Yes.
And what is your favorite verse and why?
My favorite verse is James 1, verse 2 and 3. And should I read it?
Yeah.
Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. That's my favorite verse because I feel like, at least in my life, I've gone through a lot. And I know a lot of people who have also gone through a lot. And I think it's easy for us to forget that the trials we go through for a reason. And that verse just reminds me that if there's, you know, if I'm going through a tough time, it's for a purpose.
Jon, what would you say your biggest weakness is as a Christian?
My biggest weakness as a Christian, I think, would be that I'm not as all out as I could be. So I sometimes I don't wear my Christianity on my sleeve. For example,
but wearing a tank top at the gym.
Yeah, but if you wouldn't have brought up this podcast when we met, it probably would have taken me a long time to bring up God.
Okay. It's fair enough. And it's funny you say that because last night, and I'm talking with my wife, and I told her I was actually proud of myself. I know that sounds funny, but I was proud of myself because one of my goals was, even though I do the podcast and I do all this stuff, it was to be more outwardly by wearing it on my sleeve. And the first opportunity I get with somebody, I try talking about it.
Yeah.
Just recently I was talking with a guy that was painting the house, and he didn't talk much, and I was like, okay, I'll just leave the guy alone. But then there was some pizza, and we just kind of hung around the pizza, and one thing led to another. We immediately started talking about God, and we found out we had something in common. And next thing you know, it was an hour-long conversation.
Right.
But I went home and I told my wife, I go, babe, this is great. I just absolutely love opening up about this and talking to people about it. And it's something I would push everybody out there to do, that, we've read in the Bible, right? Who denied Jesus 3 different times? Well, all of them did, actually. Everybody denied Jesus, right? And here we are. We read the Bible. We read the history of all these things that happened. And we say to ourselves, oh, how could you deny Jesus after seeing all those miracles? But yet we're afraid to talk about him when we're out in public today, after we know all this stuff, right? And we believe and we pray, and yet we won't talk about him.
Right.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, that's a really, I think, important thing for all of us to start doing every opportunity we get.
Yeah.
How about on the flip side? What would you say your biggest strength is as a Christian?
My biggest strength is trusting God for real. And it's shown up a bunch of times in my life, and I understand the power of God's will. And so it sometimes takes me a little while, but once I surrender to it, that's it. And I trust him.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's faith. Probably the absolute strongest thing any one person can have is faith. By the way, I said he was shaved head and full of tattoos. He's wearing a suit right now, and you would never know any of this stuff. So I can't wait to hear the stories. But tell us who you are today.
Who I am today. I'm married to Christine. It'll be 8 years in a couple of weeks. We have a son. His name is Xavier. He's about 1.5 years old. We live in Laguna Hills. I'm very blessed to be in a business that allows me to work with people and do very important stuff. I do financial planning stuff for families and businesses. I volunteer at Salt Church in Laguna Beach, so I lead worship there a few times a month. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
So are you the singer?
Yeah. So I'm the singer, I'm the guitar player, and I'm the drummer. So if you, all rolled up. Yeah, it's crazy. I sit on a cajon, I kick the drum with my right foot, I use the tambourine with my left foot, I play the guitar, and yeah, exactly.
So
lead worship.
You got a microphone in front of you.
Yeah.
Is this something you could do on the fly?
No.
No? Oh,
well, I mean, if we could just sing, but
just like 10 seconds. Give us 10 seconds.
No, I won't do it.
15 seconds. Okay, make it 20. Just 20 seconds.
No, I'm not. You did this to me to get me in here, too. You did.
All right. Let's move past that. Maybe at the end you'll end
get
up,
out of here. You don't want to hear me sing on this thing.
So now I'm going to ask you a series of questions that's going to take us back to who you used to be, and then we're going to walk back through your journey to today again.
Okay.
Have you ever had a dark time in your life?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Goodness. Paint the picture real quick. My dad has been a pastor for my whole life. My grandfather was a pastor, and I grew up in the church. My dad's a music pastor, which my mom's a singer, right? So that's where the music stuff came from. But early on, as soon as I figured out that I had a choice in what I wanted to do, since I had basically grown up on a church pew, I learned early on how to lie really well. And so I figured out how to go to church and be the pastor's kid and be a good boy when I was there. But, dark times started as soon as I figured out how to hide stuff from my parents. So early on, drugs, mostly weed and stuff like that. Not.
At what age?
I was thinking about that this morning. I think it was 11.
Wow.
11 or 12.
Okay.
Whenever you're in 7th grade. So, and I went to a Christian school, right? I mean, that's the terrible thing about it. But I wasn't the influenced. I was the influencer. And so I got a kick out of being a leader. I was a born leader as a little kid, right? I was the cool kid in school. So
did you have a shaved head back then?
I did not have a shaved head back then. So it all started probably when I was that young, and I figured out that I could do drugs, I could drink, and I could do things that I could hide from my parents, and that started to drive a wedge between my parents and I. I don't think they knew exactly what I was doing, but teen angst, that type of stuff. But that's really where it began. And, into high school, I just kind of continued down that path and got further and further away from my parents, the church. Even though I was still going, I was the guy who was bringing weed to church to sell it to people because I felt like it was an untapped market, right?
You were selling weed at church?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And at the same time, I was involved in music at the church. So I was the drummer, I was the guitar player, I was the, for the youth group or whatever. So
Sure.
it was the first step into a life of hypocrisy and secrets and, living part of my life in the shadows. So that's where the dark time kind of started. I was an athlete in high school. I drank a lot. I was a good kid. I was on homecoming king. I was all this stuff, but at the same time, I started into substance abuse. I mean, I started early, so got into other stuff. A lot of drinking. I got into a fight my senior year that. There were a couple of kids I didn't know, and they would always yell at me when I drove by. And so finally one day I just pulled over, and I left the parking lot. They were as soon as I drove away, they started yelling at me. So I turned around and came back to them because I was just sick of it. And it was 3 guys and a gal. And, I get out of the car and I'm angry and I'm, what are you yelling at me for? And I don't know what they're saying. And so they make an advance and I pull a pipe out of my truck and go to work, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing that I did was I yelled at the girl that was there, one of the guy's girlfriends. She was talking the whole time we were fighting. And I said something, in the heat of the moment, I said, shut up, or shut up, I'll kill you, something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously didn't mean it. I never even advanced on her. But that was done, and I left. I figured it was, over with. So I come back to school on Monday, and there's a police officer there, and the principal's there, and they escort me to the principal's office, and they're like, hey, what happened on Friday? And, I told them what happened, and they said that the girl's charging you for, death threats, right? So we need to search your vehicle. Well, I had an ounce of weed in my truck, and the pipe behind in the bed of the truck, right? And so I'm thinking, like, dude, life is over, right? Over. Now, 17, this happened in May, beginning of May. My birthday was like May 11th. So my birthday is May 11th. So it happened in April or May, and, cop goes to the truck, finds the pipe, doesn't find the ounce of weed.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, it's an ounce of weed in a truck that's with the windows up. Like, how do you not smell this? How do you not see it? I thought it was over. Anyway, I'm tried as a minor. It was 3 felonies. Death threats, terrorist threats, and intent to do bodily harm, assault with a deadly weapon, something like that. They charged me as a minor, even though when I went to court, I was 18. So my parents, right, Pastor Jon Lugo and, Mother Gina Lugo, are thinking, what the heck is going on with this kid, right? Yeah. And that didn't wake me up or anything like that. I was mad at the girl that, said that. I thought it was crazy. So I had applied to colleges, and I basically applied to any college that would take me outside of the Bay Area. I didn't want to be at home because I wanted to have some freedom, right? I was kind of tired of hiding everything that I wanted to do. So I got into Long Beach State, and I got into Cal State Fullerton. And I chose Cal State Fullerton out of a hat. I mean, it had nothing to do with anything other than the fact that it was a plane ride away from San Jose, where I'm from.
Yeah. Just happens to be my alma mater.
Hey-o.
How about that?
So that's where it really started. That's where I had some freedom, and I mean, it's almost as if I had been waiting my whole life for it, just to kind of get out from underneath my parents and the stigma and all this stuff. So I went absolutely mad in college. It was like I had a death wish. I immediately found a dealer in Fullerton for weed. Then I found a dealer that would get me shrooms. Then I found a dealer that would get me cocaine. Then I found a dealer who would get me prescription, pharmaceuticals, ecstasy. I mean, everything. And I lived in the dorms, so it was like I had a 7-Eleven, right, for drugs. And
now, were you selling?
I was selling.
Okay.
Yeah, I was selling. It was,
So you were always one level higher than everybody else.
Correct. Right.
Okay.
Correct. And so, I spent the first year of school, I mean, it was all about drugs. It was all about partying. It was all about sex. The running joke was that I, had a girl in every single floor of every single dorm building in the school. Which actually, I mean, could potentially be true, but, and it was one of those things where I couldn't even look my parents in the eye for a while. It was tough. Yeah. I'd come back to visit. I'd kind of, just stay away. But
were your parents oblivious to everything?
I don't think so. I think my dad knew, because my dad, experienced a little bit more of life than my mom did. My mom was, she grew up she was like born on a church pew, right? Her dad was a pastor, and she did it all right.
Right.
My dad, he went through some stuff, not to the extent that I did, but I think my dad knew, but I don't think they knew how bad.
Yeah. Do they now?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So I guess there's more to the story.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
I'll let you go.
Yeah. So, I'll try to make college into a brief synopsis, but I joined a fraternity.
Which one?
Pi Kappa Phi.
Okay.
And I was so bad, Dino, that the fraternity wouldn't let me live in the fraternity house.
Wow.
They didn't. I mean, I was willing to do it. They didn't want me there. It was so bad that these guys would take a trip to Havasu once a year, and I never got to go, even though I supplied all the drugs for the whole trip.
The fraternity house wouldn't let you go.
The fraternity house would not let me live in the house, and they would not let me go on road trips with them. Okay. I was too much of a liability. So I became an alcoholic easy. I was addicted to all kinds of drugs, cocaine, prescription meds. I had to stop smoking weed because I was on probation. So I was on probation when I went to Fullerton
because of the
fight in high school, right? I had 3 felony charges hanging over me, and the judge said all I had to do was, stay out of trouble, and in a year, right, they would all fall off. And what did I do? I did the exact opposite, right? I had to go back. The reason I had to go back home every month was to do a drug test for my parole officer or probation officer. And I had to stop smoking weed because if I smoked weed, it would show up in my urine because it stays in there longer. But I could do cocaine because if I stopped a few days ahead and take, whatever. So I was just playing with, fire. My nickname was 151. I would go to parties with 2 bottles of 151 in my back pockets. I would drink 1 bottle that night. Wow. We had a running bet that I couldn't drink 151 bottles of 151 in a summer, 3 months, and I did.
Wow.
And so we kept all the bottles. They were all over my, apartment, and we put the dates on it when we drank it. And I was so crazy. I wasn't even buying this alcohol. I was stealing the alcohol because it was a rush, right? I'd go and just steal 4 bottles of 151 and
how were you
go
doing in
drink them.
school?
I don't remember. I don't remember anything from any class that I took. I somehow managed to pass most of them. Probably cheated,
Did you ever at any point feel like you had gone too far or that you need to stop? Like, did you ever feel any guilt at all?
I felt guilt, but I felt guilt because of my parents. Like, I felt the guilt that I had was like, gosh, I hope my parents don't find out about this.
Why? You obviously didn't care about anything or anybody.
I don't know, man. I think it was just, I knew how important it was to them for me to act a certain way during my childhood because being in church.
Sure.
And I felt like it was going to be more an embarrassment to them if I got caught, if I went to jail. But for me, I didn't care. I felt like I was, Donnie Brasco or Scarface or something. I was out of my mind.
Right.
So, all that type of stuff. Now, this is where things get really dark. Second, third year of college, I had kind of, through my dealers, I had kind of worked my way up the ranks, so to speak. So for certain products, if you will, I had guys underneath me who were also moving product. Very rarely was this a person that I went to school with or in the fraternity. It was somebody I knew through the drug business. And so I worked with 2 of the main guys for different products in Southern California. One guy was on the pharmaceutical side. The other guy was on the cannabis side, right? So he was the guy who was bringing in 18-wheelers of dope from Canada and Mexico in 50-gallon garbage bags, 20-gallon garbage bags. And then we'd have to sort it, and I'd take 20 pounds of it and send it off to New Mexico or something like that. Then I had a guy.
So you were making money too.
I was making money. I was making money and spending money.
Did you have a job anywhere else?
I think I did in year 2 or 3, and I worked at Home Depot. I drove like forklifts and stuff at Home Depot. So I had no money from the drug business because I spent all my money from the drug business. I don't even know on what, just on stuff, on other drugs and all that. So these 2 guys had never met, right? Guy A and Guy B. They're not actually allowed to meet in the game. They can't meet.
Okay.
But I ended up becoming very close with the cannabis guy and met his family. And the crazy thing about this, Dino, is this guy was kind of like a regular guy, other than the fact that he looked like an absolute murderer, if he shaved his head and saw all his tattoos. Mm-hmm. He was a nice guy. And had a fiance and a little brother and a mom and dad that I met. And it's like everybody kind of knew what he was doing. And that, to me, was just a totally different world. I'm thinking like, God, my family is over here.
Yeah.
And if they even heard about this, they'd probably have a heart attack. And then this guy's family knows what he does. I was attracted to evil in college. And I had plenty of it, and I jumped in with both feet. So I knew this guy and his family and all his stuff. And this guy over here, the pharmaceutical guy, I didn't know super well. Met him through a mutual friend and just basically did business. Now, after a little while, I became the go-between between these guys. So I would trade product with both of them. They would never exchange money, but I would take 1,000 Oxycontin from this guy or 1,000 morphine, and I'd give it to this guy over here, and then I'd take 10 pounds or 20 pounds of weed, and I'd bring it over to this guy. So I, in addition to being one of their lieutenants, I was also kind of their middleman for their own personal stash. Neither of these guys are guys you want to owe money to. One of these guys calls me up one day and says, dude, I need you to stop everything and I need your help. My partner just spent $1 million on product and he didn't check with me about it. And I'm like, this is in the early 2000s, $1 million of product. So, he's like, we need to get rid of everything like right now. I mean, I don't care where you have to go, do whatever you got to do, sell it for whatever you got to sell it for. I need that money back. That's, that was crazy.
Yeah.
He paid cash for it, $1 million cash. These are guys that own multiple businesses, construction companies, you name it, to funnel money through.
Wow.
So I go to work, call all my guys, send them off. I got guys going to New Mexico, Arizona, Oregon. They're driving all over the place with product. Meanwhile, I got this guy over here with the weed stuff, and I basically sold a ton of it to him and did the normal transaction that I do. A couple weeks go by, we move all the product for the pharmaceuticals, and a couple weeks go by, and I can't reach my weed guy. And my weed guy is the scariest guy I've ever. I mean, he's the nicest guy, right, of this whole crew, but he's the scariest guy I've ever met. Yeah. I mean, literally, and this is going to sound crazy and made up, but when I met this guy, he had a tattoo, waist to neck on his chest of like the devil's face.
Oh, wow.
Probably 6'2", 6'3", 250, 260, totally jacked. Tattoos on his scalp.
Wow.
Backs of his hand. Complete, and all evil. I mean, just, picture evil, and this guy had it painted on him. Yeah. And a nice guy, right? So I can't get a hold of this guy, and he's not the guy you want to owe money to and not pay him back. I owed him like $10,000 or something. And so I'm calling mutual friends, and normally he'll pick up. And this is also a guy who gave me a business card and said, hey, if you ever get arrested with anything, you call this number, you won't spend a night in jail. It's going to cost you $20,000, but you will never step foot in a cell.
Really?
Yeah. It was an attorney. I don't know who it was, but he was a guy that my guy provided to. So I couldn't believe that he would have been in jail, right? Because he's got this connection. So I'm thinking there's no way he got locked up.
Right.
I mean, maybe he did. Maybe got in big trouble. Maybe he killed somebody. Maybe something happened. So almost a week goes by. I hear nothing. I finally get a hold of the guy who originally connected us. And I said, dude, I got to get a hold of this guy. I don't want him to think I'm dodging him. I don't know if he's in Canada. I don't know if he's in Mexico. Do you know where he is? He's like, dude, you didn't hear? And I thought, oh my God, he got locked up. And my buddy goes, no, man, he died. He died. Like, how'd he die? Did he get shot?
Yeah.
Did he get in a fight with the cops and lose?
Yeah.
He's like, no, he overdosed on, Oxy.
Wow.
Which I had just provided him 2 weeks prior.
Right.
Now, this guy had an Oxy problem for years. It was what I told him. I tried to justify it to myself. And right at that moment, I realized that, you know what? I had all the opportunities in the world to tell this guy that there was a different way to live life, right? Yeah. Even if I wasn't living it. I lived it, through my parents. I grew up in that type of an environment. And I realized that I just lost a guy that I considered to be a friend. And, dude's in hell. I mean, barring anything that may have happened between the 2 weeks or 3 weeks between when I saw him last and when he passed away. And that was on me. Yeah. And because I was living and doing my thing, and my actions never had eternal consequences, right? Everything, I was invincible. I was young. I was, untouchable. And the toughest guy I knew, hands down, the guy that I would pick out of anybody I know to be in a dark alley with against all odds, he's the guy that dies.
Yeah.
Right? That was the darkest time in my life, for sure.
So you felt
guilt,
like maybe you had something to do with actually killing somebody.
Mm-hmm.
During this time in college, up until that moment, had you gone to church at all?
Mm-mm.
So even when you went back home, you weren't going to church?
No, I'd usually leave on Saturday night or early Sunday, so I didn't have to.
And did you have a Bible in your room?
No. Mm-mm.
Did you at any time during that period say, what am I doing? I'm an idiot, or I'm just a bad man. I know better.
Yeah.
I mean, at any point, like, just question it.
Yeah.
I know you didn't stop, but...
Oh, I did.
Okay,
I did often.
So
and
you had those moments.
Mm-hmm.
And did anybody have the guts to try and talk to you about trying to save you? About, hey, man, you're better than this?
Yeah, a lot. It never came from a godly place. It came from my friends and my girlfriends and women, girls I was sleeping with, and a couple of the girls I was involved with, they saw through
who you really were.
Right.
All right. So what happens now? I mean, this guy dies.
This guy dies. This was all in the time frame of us moving the product for the pharmaceutical guy. And I just went into a tailspin of guilt and sadness and darkness, and still doing drugs. I was still drinking. I drank myself stupid, and I still had guys out there in the field, if you will, moving product for me for this other guy. And maybe it was 3 days later, one of my guys showed up at my apartment to bring me the money from selling stuff. And this guy, Dino, I mean, he could have... I've never seen somebody look so terrible in my life. I mean, this guy looked like he should have been in a hospital. Now, he was a drug addict like me, right? But this guy was into meth and kind of stuff like that too. So he was taking pharmaceuticals, he was doing meth, he was drinking, and he said that he hadn't slept in like 6 days or something. Wow. And he looked like death, dude. I mean, I saw this guy and I immediately it hit me that I sent this guy on a mission.
Yeah.
And I said, again, above all else, I don't care what you have to do, you got to move this much product, and I need this much money back, and I need it in a week. Right? Go get it done. And he did it for me.
Yeah.
This guy just got in a car accident on the freeway right next to my apartment. His car was all banged up, and he didn't pull over. He didn't, he's like, oh, I bumped into a semi truck.
Wow.
And I didn't want to stop because I had all this money on me. So, and I realized, I brought him in, I gave him some water, and I just sat there, and I just lost this guy over here a few days prior. I just had this guy come back, and I'm thinking, you know what? Like, my influence is either going to put people down the wrong direction, or I'm going to have to change some stuff so that I don't do this type of thing to guys that consider me a friend and care about me.
Right.
So I told this guy, I said, you know what, dude? I will never ask you to do this again. I'm out of the business. I'm out. I said, dude, you look like death, and I did this to you. And he's saying, no, you didn't. It's me. No, I did this to you. Now, the thing, Dino, is at that turning point, I still didn't want to be involved with God. It wasn't like I told this to this guy and I thought, okay, God, it's finally time, right? Come fix me. I just thought, you know what? I could be a good man or I could be a bad man, and I've been a very bad man, and I don't want to be a bad man. I want to be a good man. I want to have good influence on people.
Yeah.
And so that's where I wanted to go. But now I want to get out of the drug game, right? Now, you can't just walk away from the drug game. Maybe it's different now. I don't know. It's been however long this was, 15 years ago. But at the time, because I was basically second or third in command of an organization, I knew too much stuff, right? I just did.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can just disappear, and these guys are wondering, dude, where is this guy? Now, I cannot sleep. I don't want to drink. I feel like I'm losing my mind because of what happened to this guy. He died. I got this guy on my couch. I'm trying to nurse him back to health. And I know that I got to change some stuff. I go to In-N-Out Burger with my buddy. One of my roommates, a good guy, lived with him for 3 years. He knew how crazy I was. He's one of those guys that's like, dude, you gotta you got to slow down. You're going to end up in prison or dead, right?
Yeah.
I go to In-N-Out with him, and I'm just like, dude, I feel so guilty. I feel guilty for what I've done to people. I feel guilty for lying to my parents. I feel guilty for lying to my girlfriend. Dude, I had 2 girlfriends through college, and I banged every single girl in the dorm simultaneously, right? And while I was in relationships.
Yeah.
My now wife was my girlfriend in college. And so at the time, 3 years in, I'm thinking, God, I've been lying to her for 2 years. She knew, but at the same time, she kind of put up with it. She's the one that kind of saw through all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So my buddy just goes, dude, you got to come clean. You got to come clean. Like, you got too much guilt. You've been lying your whole life. You got to come clean. And I'm thinking, like, dude, you're crazy.
Yeah.
You're crazy. If I come clean, it could land me in prison. Right? This guy just died. I mean, I don't want to advertise that. He's like, you got to do it. You will not be able to move forward unless you come clean. You got to wipe the slate clean. And I'm thinking, like, dude, if I tell my parents this stuff, they're never going to talk to me again.
Or live through the conversation.
Right. They're going to each have heart attacks and die instantaneously. That was a turning point. That was the turning point in my life at In-N-Out Burger.
Wow.
With my buddy.
Hello, everybody. My name's Phil. I am the producer of God's Men of Influence, and I just am jumping in here because we're going to have to leave the rest of the interview for part number 2, and I love this interview so much. So if you enjoyed part number 1, please hang in there. Part number 2 had a serious impact on me, and it's a very, very powerful show. So stick around for more of God's Men of Influence. I want to direct you to the website, godsmenofinfluence.org, for past shows. You can go to Twitter at God's Men of Influence. You can find us on Facebook at God's Men of Influence. And for Dino and John, I just want to say, be blessed, be joyous, and be welcome at God's Men of Influence.